Good morning, everybody. It is just about 9 o'clock in the morning on August 10, 2019, and I have just uploaded, just a little while ago, my sound summary of the Ollo S4R neutral headphones, right? Flat neutral headphones. And it's the first comparison of the Ollo versus another pair of headphones. And as you know from the title of this video, that headphone is the NDH20. This is a comparison long in the waiting, and I finally have the ability to test both of these side by side. And why is that important? Because there are certain individuals who have claimed that the NDH20 are the end-all be-all for neutrality, for flat listening, for critical listening, and I tend to disagree with that assessment because of the test that we have done so far with respect to the NDH20. Let's see how the NDH20 stack up against the Ollo, which is significantly cheaper and much more affordable than the NDH20. So today's test is going to be just the bass response. The next test, the next video, is going to be about the midtones, and then the final video in the triumvirate is going to be the treble response. And then ultimately, the conclusory video is going to come up after that. And the idea is I'd be able to upload all these videos in the next 4 or 5 days at most. So let's get on with it. Then before we actually do the sound test, I do want to compare the specs. The S4R, the closed back, is 32 ohms, and it has 50 millimeter dynamic drivers. Compare that to the Neumann NDH20, and the Neumann NDH20 has an impedance of 150 ohms. That's a lot. Now, what does that result? Well, theoretically, that means that the NDH20 is harder to drive. The other major difference is that the driver diameter for the NDH20 is 38 millimeters versus, as I said, the 50 millimeters of the S4R. The third most important difference that I can point out is that the frequency range for the two headphones is substantially different. The S4R has a range from 20 to 22, so 20 hertz to 22,000 hertz. Whereas the Neumann has from 5 hertz all the way to 30,000 hertz. Huge difference. You might say to yourself, oh my God, I definitely want the NDH20 because it's such a big difference. Here's the thing. You hear from 20 to 20. 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That is the human hearing optimally. But as you grow older, the less capable your ears become in picking up the frequency range, the lower frequency and the higher frequency. You become a little bit more mid-rangey. Now, there's always exceptions to that, but just speaking generally, the fact that it's from 5 to 30 is irrelevant because you can't hear them even with optimal hearing. So why is it there? Some people will say because you can feel it instead of hearing it. Fine, that's a subjective experience that not everybody is going to get. In fact, I would submit that the vast majority of individuals will not be able to experience 5 hertz all the way to 30,000 hertz, which is why the more reasonable 20 to 22 for the S4R is, as I say, more reasonable. Okay, those are the three major differences. Now let's listen. As I said, this is the bass test. So let's start with the NDH20. Currently, I have everything plugged into a switch, an AB switch, that is itself being fed into the Monolith THX AAA desktop. This is off of Spotify, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I know. If you have any complaints about Spotify and not using FLAC, please help me figure out how to make FooBar 2000 work. It's so confusing. I'm still working on trying to get everything together. Okay, so let's start with Mountains. Because Mountains has this kind of this rumble in the really sub-bass frequency. We are currently at negative 33 decibels, but I'm going to increase to negative 28 decibels. That's our starting point for both headphones. Here we go with the NDH20. Initially, when the song starts, this is clicking, clacking, blah, blah, blah. It's not all that relevant for this test. I'm going to increase the volume to negative 20 decibels. 20, there we go. Because these headphones are 150 ohms, it takes more juice to get them to work at their optimal frequencies. And at negative 20 decibels, I don't really hear the rumble that's prevalent in the song right now at 30 seconds. So I'm going to increase to negative 13. And I still don't really hear it. I'm going to increase to negative 10. And I'm starting to hear the lower rumble at this point, especially when the bass comes in. Just it's a rolling bass, so to speak. It comes in every once in a while. Let's skip to the halfway point of this song, where there's the crescendo. And at negative 10 decibels, it's comfortable listening level. And here comes a crescendo. What I hear is the following. It sounds really closed off, very... I guess you could say it's intimate, but it's not a really intimate experience, because part of intimacy with a pair of headphones, in my definition, is that you also get some warmth out of it. There's no warmth out of the NDH20. It's smooth, but it's very intimate. It's very closed. It's a narrow type of experience, meaning there's not a whole lot of width when all the instruments start playing. The crescendo starts around halfway of this song. And that low rumble is there, and it's just not particularly clean and clear. Let's keep playing for another few seconds. Yeah, that low rumble, it seems to be interfering with the treble, and the frequency seems to be just muddied. It's blending things through. The problem that I'm hearing is that organ is overpowering everything else. There is separation of instruments, but it's not particularly good separation of instruments, because with that separation, it's a lot of blending of the frequencies. And that organ is just really distorting what should be clear. There's little clarity with the organ playing and all the instruments coming in. It's mostly organ, and then the other frequencies chime in when they're loud enough. But nothing really busts through that organ frequency, because, as I said, it's overpowering. Now let us switch to the Ollo. And with the Ollo, I'm gonna go back down to negative 28. And we're going to start with negative 28. Because these are 32 ohm, we know for a fact that these are going to be much easier to drive, and I will probably not need to get them to negative 10 decibels, but let's see. Here we go. And I can immediately hear that low rumble as soon as the song starts at negative 28 decibels on the Ollo. I'm going to increase the volume to negative 15. And we're at negative 15 now. I can hear that low rumble in the background. It's a really low layer. It's the lowest layer in this song. I hear much more with these headphones compared to the Neumann. And it's it is clearer because of that width, that extra width there. The bass is not accentuated in any way, so it doesn't sound rumbly. It just, I can hear it. Let's skip to halfway where the crescendo comes in. And I'm going to increase to negative 13. We're at negative 13. Here comes the organ and all the instruments now. Very crystal clean sound. And that rumble is a huge difference between the Ollo and the Neumann. I can hear the separate instruments. So here's the thing. With the Ollo, the organ certainly is the prevalent portion of this song, as it's meant to be, and it's loud. But the other instruments are also loud, and so all of that information is coming in. It's just a huge amount of information into my ears. Let's go back to the Neumann real quick, and let's go back to 2 minutes into this song, and I will tell you again what I hear. Right, Neumanns are on my head. We're going to increase to negative 10 decibels. And let's go back to 2 minutes. Here we go. Significantly more closed off. When the crescendo hits, that separation is significantly less than with the separation on the Ollo. There's no doubt about it. The way I would describe it is that the Neumann sounds much more muffled when compared to the Ollo audio. And this is not a matter of slight degrees. This is a situation of significant difference. Now, I cannot explain how night and day the difference is. And when I listened to the HP50 versus the Neumann, I was wowed. I was taken aback by it. You could hear my surprise on the video. So I'm used to it now. But back and forth, A and B with the Ollo and the Neumann is almost the same type of difference. It's just night and day, in my opinion. The Neumanns are just much more closed off, and they sound more muffled than the Ollo. The Ollo has more separation, cleaner separation, and it's uncolored. Whereas the Neumann tends to kind of color the bass and blend the frequency in far too much, causing what I would say is distortion amongst the frequency range. Now let's skip to Angel by Massive Attack. And as we know with Angel, it is a hyper processed song. It's all electronic bass, and it's Massive Attack. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. It's just their signature style. I have the Neumanns plugged in at negative 10 decibels. Let's go. I can hear that low rumble. Easy to hear because it's so prevalent in this song. And then the other bass comes in, the drum. That bass hit, when it hits tick, 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 it comes out fairly clean. And that lower bass frequency is prevalent. I hear nothing particularly distorted. Just a lot of heaviness in that low rumbly bass, meaning it's a subjective opinion, but with that low rumbly bass, it just sounds claustrophobic, so to speak. But you may like it. There's not any width at all to this song on these headphones. And now the vocals have come in. It sounds fairly smooth, the vocals do. Now let's switch to the Ollo. Okay, I have the Ollo on my head, switched, and here we go. Also at negative 10 decibels. I'm going to take it down to negative 13, negative 14. That low rumble is less heavy because the headphone sounds more wide. It sounds like there's a little bit more air and much cleaner presentation. That drum strike, tick, 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 is a bit sharper and much better separated when compared to the Neumann. That low rumble is crystal clean, whereas with the Neumann, I would say it was a bit too heavy sounding. Here comes I think it's some sort of a horn instrument. And the vocals are going to start in a few seconds. I would say the bass response for at least the drum is much cleaner and more precise on the Ollo. And the separation with the vocal is substantially better on the Ollo. The vocals actually have a separation. So this is hard to explain if you're not sitting here and listening to it. So this is what I would say. You have the Ollo, and on this song, when the bass is playing, not only does it sound more open, more airy, but it's less distorted, in my opinion. It's less, in your face. It's just presenting the frequency as it's coming. And then around 1 minute, when the vocals start, they sound, I would say, probably as smooth as on the NDH20, although I would submit that the NDH20 is a bit smoother with the vocal. But what the NDH20 does is that it melds the vocal frequency with the sub bass and the bass, and there's not a real separation between the two. Whereas with the Ollo Audio, there is a clear separation between the bass and the vocal frequency. This is, once again, not a matter of slight degrees. This is a clear A and B difference. One is simply better at separating, much cleaner experience. Let's go to Drum Solo by Jack Bruce and Simon Phillips. And let's go, well, I have the NDH20 on, so let's just keep that on at negative 14 decibels. Here we go. The soundstage left to right is really well captured on these headphones. Starts from the right ear cup and moves all the way to the left ear cup. I'm going to skip ahead a couple of seconds to when he starts riffing. And it's fast. The bass hit, the drum hit is very fast. It hits and moves on, hits and it moves on. There's not a lingering resonance with each drum strike. It's clean, precise, open sounding. So now let's switch to the NDH20. We're going to keep this at negative 14 decibels, and let's see how it produces the sound. Here we go. Yeah, it needs much more power. I'm going to increase to negative 10. Going to increase again to negative 8. It sounds closed off. Now, when the drum strikes do happen, it's fast. I don't hear any real resonance. But the soundstage left to right, when compared to the Ollo, is not as clean. Let's skip ahead. And now he's riffing. I mean, the drum strikes are sharp. I'll increase the volume again to negative 5. Okay, so I'm at negative 5 decibels with the Neumann, and it's about the same volume-ish when I was listening to it negative 14 on the Ollo. And I have to say, the Neumann is much more closed off, less airy. The soundstage is, in my opinion, more limited on the Neumann than it is on the Ollo. The Neumann soundstage, it's like it shrinks it by half. It cuts it off by half when you compare it to the Ollo. And on top of that, even though that the bass response, the drum strikes are precise, because of that narrower soundstage and that more closed-off experience, it kind of gets muddied, right? So each drum strike followed by the next one, it just kind of blends it together. Whereas with the Ollo, my experience was that it was, one drum strike, the next, then the next, then the next, and you could hear it, and there's a clear separation of each drum strike, and it's sharp, and it's precise, and it's fast. The Neumanns have sharp and fast. It's missing the precise, and it's missing the soundstage. Let's now skip to Kodo and listen to Lion by Kodo. I currently have the Neumann's on at -5 decibels. Here we go. I'm going to bring this down to -10. So when the drum starts, there's this big drum that's playing immediately, and the vocalists are going hoo-ha, hoo-ha. It sounds, again, very closed off, intimate if you want to call it, but without the warmth. The smaller drums come in very fast. The resonance doesn't stay particularly long. So when you have multiple drums playing, I hear that big drum, and I hear the smaller drum also playing, but it's hard to hear it. There's not a clear separation between the two. When the big drum rolls away, like they're not playing it as hard, and the medium drums come in at a harsher volume, at a higher volume, you can hear it. But when everything is playing together at about equal force, equal volume, it's hard to differentiate the bigger drum from the smaller drums. Okay, so now let's switch to the Ollo. Oops, sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. And I'm going to bring the volume down to -14 for the Ollo. Here we are, -14. And let's start again. More width immediately. That low bass drum has less, I guess, gusto to it, less bulk to it. And that medium drum comes in, clear separation, fast. No resonance. And now I clearly hear two different types of drums. Small drums, medium drums. Different tonalities. And now all the drums are playing. I can clearly hear the big drum in the background at the bottom layer. I can hear the cymbals. I can hear the smaller drums. And here are the medium drums playing with the smaller drums. I can hear that. The bigger drum, that lower level drum, is not playing. And it'll start playing in just a second. Or a few seconds. Here it is. Yeah. Much better separation of the multiple drums that are being played with the Ollo versus the Neumann. Let's go to Irodori. I still have the Ollo on my head, -14 decibels. Here we go. This is a different type of drum that we listen to in Lion. There's a bit of resonance to this because of the way that this drum is manufactured, I assume. And there are two drums. There's a low rumbly drum and then there's a faster drum. And now the flutes have come in. I clearly hear the flutes. I clearly hear the medium drums, and I hear that low rumbly drum that started the song. Good separation of the instruments. Unmuddied. No distortion. I'm going to skip ahead a couple of seconds. And now it's that low drum back in, and they're just playing the low drum with some sort of clacky cymbal-ish thing. Yeah, very clean, clear, no boost to the bass. So let's switch to the NDH20. I have the NDH20 on my head. I'm going to increase the volume to -10 because that's apparently where it likes to live. And let's start. Sounds a bit dull, to be frank. It sounds more closed off, significantly less airy. I'll increase the volume to -5. I do hear two different drums. I hear the drum that started all of this, and then I hear the medium drum. But it's not as good a separation as with the Ollo. It sounds more claustrophobic in my opinion. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. And this is where that low bass drum is riffing. It sounds almost like, it sounds almost like you put your ear right on the bass drum itself as somebody is playing it. I mean, it just like smashes into your eardrum without any definition, and it just sounds dull and thick without real detail. Let's go back a couple of seconds. Let's go to 130, and let's compare between 130 and 150, just that low bass drum playing. Here we go. We still have the NDH20. Okay, and now we're going to do is, what we're going to do is switch to the Ollo. And I'm going to bring down the volume to -14 for the Ollo, because that's where it likes to live. And let's play. Much less emphasis on the bass, cleaner, wider. Yeah. Okay. I think I've heard enough. Is there a winner? There is. In my opinion, there is. I think that the Ollo audio reproduces the bass significantly cleaner, wider, better separation compared to the Neumann. Now, there have been some people who have commented on my videos that the Neumann is a bass king, and you don't know what you're talking about. And Zio says that it's got great bass, and you need to learn how to listen to headphones. Well, why don't you put on the Neumann and you compare it to another pair of headphones, and then you tell me, instead of taking other people's word for it, who have never done an A-B comparison of the Neumann. And I'm telling you, doing the A-B comparison, that the Neumann is much more closed off. And it sounds claustrophobic. And there is an emphasis on the bass frequency in such a way that it makes it muddy. It's not like an emphasis like on a Beats or a Bose headphone, where those just, ramp up the bass and everything else is sacrificed. I mean, I can hear smoothness in the Neumanns. As I've said before many times, the Neumanns are very, very smooth sounding headphones, especially for vocals. But when you have bass mixed in, and there's a lot of bass, and then there's deep bass, it gets muddy, and it just starts distorting the other frequencies. Even though it's smooth, the distortion doesn't really do any justice to the song that you're listening to, particularly when there is no soundstage. Okay, so let me rephrase. There's not no soundstage, there is some soundstage. And when you compare the Ollo with the NDH20, you immediately realize that the Ollo has much better soundstage, much wider soundstage. As I said moments ago, with the Neumanns, it almost feels as if they have shortened the soundstage, limited the soundstage, cut it down by half. That's a significant difference. And what happens when you cut it down by half? Let me put it in terms that might be a little easier to understand. You are at a concert hall. Let's say it's a medium-sized concert hall. It can seat 1,000 people. Is that a medium or is that small? Whatever. Let's assume 1,000 people. You've got rows and rows of seats. And with the NDH20, it sounds as if you're sitting close to the stage and you're right up against the drum. You're hearing a lot of that drum, and you're not hearing enough of everything else in the presentation of the song. Compare that to the Ollo, where the Ollo, it feels almost like you're sitting somewhere near the middle of this auditorium, this theater. And you're hearing the drum, you're hearing the cymbals, you're hearing the vocalists, you're hearing the wood, the brass, you're hearing everything, and it's all coming in separated. Now, it's not as, thick as with the Neumann, obviously, because you're sitting so close. You're sitting right next to that drum, and so you're getting more of that drum frequency than you are the rest of what's being played. But if you're sitting in the middle of this place, this theater, you have a wider soundstage because you're not so close up to the instruments. You're sitting back, and you have the ability to hear everything as that natural frequency just comes from the instruments, and it travels through the space that you're in, and it comes and hits your ears. You have the ability to hear all of it instead of being so close and only hearing mostly just drums. Now, that's not to say that all you hear is the drums on the Neumann. That's not what I'm trying to convey, but it just sounds so heavy-handed. So maybe somebody who says, well, these are bass kings. Well, okay, maybe you're a bass head, right? If you think these are bass kings, then you're a bass head, and you really like that sound. That's fine. But these are not mixing and mastering headphones. Tell me one individual who wants a true neutral headphone and is not mixing just specifically for the bass head crowd. Why would they want a pair of headphones that accentuates and muddies with the lower frequency and has a much more closed off experience? Why would they want that? I don't know. Maybe there are people who want that. That's fine, but I don't think that's what the purpose of a neutral, flat-sounding headphone is. It's not to close one side off, essentially, which is what the Ollo tend to do, in my opinion. I think there's a clear winner. For me, there's a clear winner. I think the Ollo just win. It's a cleaner, more neutral, much flatter, and wider soundstage. There are no two ways about it. It's not a slight degree of difference. It's a significant degree of difference. I hope this has been of some help. And I hope that people who are thinking about buying the Neumann take a look at the Ollo. Take a look at the HP50. Take a look at other headphones. Just because one individual or two people or three people on YouTube say, oh yeah, these are fantastic. These beat the Mr. Speaker's Ether C Flows. Those are terrible, and I'm definitely going to use the Neumanns. I mean, come on, give me a break. That's not, if that is true for you, that is your experience, then I would submit that there is a cheaper alternative, the HP50. And then there's a middle ground alternative, the Ollo Audio. Right? I find it hard to believe that the Neumanns are that good, because they're not that good. They're not that type of headphone. And when Neumann demands $500 for these headphones, they better deliver outstanding sound, especially with certain claims like these are better than $1,500 pair of headphones. And I don't get that sensation. Next time, we are going to compare the Ollo to the Neumann and listen to the mids, so the vocals, and see how those are impacted, comparing the characteristics of these headphones. I hope everybody has a wonderful Saturday. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope you all get enough rest and you have a chance to kind of recuperate from your rough work week. And if this is your work week, if you are in fact still in your work week, I hope you have a pleasant remainder of your work schedule and that you enjoy the time that you're going to get off, hopefully soon. Have a wonderful day.